Hi guys, this is Hero. How's everyone doing today? आज बताइए केम आज सब कैसे हो? So today I'm going over the relationship between the ascendant chart and the moon chart. Okay. For this video, I'll give an example. Okay, very specific example. I'll give the example of the moon being in the 8th house, and let's just say the Venus being in 9th house. Okay. So if your moon is in the 8th and your Venus is in the 9th house, in your moon chart, your Venus would go to the 2nd house. Okay. Now, it is important to understand the true theme, the true root core of each house, right? And this is not to be confused with what each house signifies from the ascendant. Okay. For example, let's just say the 10th house. Yes, the 10th house from the ascendant signifies career, prestige, all this kind of stuff. But what does it actually represent at a core level, the 10th house? And what I mean by that is if I were to take the 10th position from any single house, I could say, hey, the 10th position from any house represents the blank of that house, right? And the answer here is purpose, right? The 10th position represents purpose. So the 10th position from the ascendant, which the ascendant represents your external self, is your 10th house. So your purpose of your external self is career, prestige, all the stuff, right? Now, the reason why the moon chart doesn't really make a lot of sense is because we've only really memorized the 10th or the positions from the ascendant and what they signify, right? But not what each house actually from a core level represents, right? Um, so that's going to be very important for you guys to understand, right? In order for this whole relationship between the ascendant and the moon chart to make sense, because all the placements are staying the same, right? But the house placements are shifting. But if you understand what each house represents at a core level, you'll see how they play out, right? Now, I can't go over all the placements here in this video, but I luckily have a video on this, right? If you want to watch my all astrology houses made simple video, I'll explain what each house represents there with, some additional explanation and information. Now, back to the example. So we have this Venus in the 9th house, and in the moon chart, it's in the 2nd house because your moon's in the 8th house. Now, we need to understand right off the bat what three things mean: the 8th house, the 9th house, and the 2nd house, right? The 8th house, because the moon is sitting there, it represents intuitiveness. The 9th house, because Venus sits there, it represents learning. In the 2nd house, right? Because the 9th house is second from the 8th. So the 2nd house, you could say, represents stability and direct gains. Okay. Now, so we understand that your moon is your mind, right? Your emotional self. So it's very intuitive, let's just say. Okay. Now, let's just say you start a Venus Dasha, Venus Mahadasha. Okay. So your Venus represents what? Your sense, your enjoyment, right? And your 9th house represents what? Learning. So you could say your Venus is enjoying learning when the Dasha starts, right? Now, why is the 9th second from the 8th? Well, because the 8th house, which represents intuitiveness, and the 2nd house, which represents stability and direct gains, the stability and direct gains of your intuitiveness is higher learning, like religion or higher studies or whatever, right? This is why for anybody to really grasp religion or grasp any sort of higher studies, like PhD or master's program or any of these like fancy degrees, you need to have like an intuitive kind of knack for that subject in order to kind of build and grow on it, right? So let's just assume you understand that. So your Venus, when it starts, it on the surface, it's in the 9th house. So you'll find enjoyment in learning or higher learnings and things like that. Now, in the moon chart, it's in the 2nd house. Now, your moon is naturally very, intuitive and possibly a little bit ungrounded, but how does this Venus affect your mind? This is what the moon chart's showing. So because you are enjoying this learning, this higher learning, whether it comes in the sense of religion or higher conventional studies at like a university or something, it's making your mind feel stable and as if it directly gains something, right? Why? Because it's intuitive. So when you're learning about this stuff, it one is building on that intuitiveness the same way like the second house theme is. And secondly, it feels very stable, right? Like your intuitiveness can go all over the place, but your religion is kind of like that grounded, you know, guideline at the end of the day for, you know, your intuitiveness, you could say, right? This is why I also made a video on the balance of spirituality and religion, right? So I hope that made sense. How that Venus kind of fits the bill here for that. Yes, you know, the moon chart and the ascendant, they're not fighting each other. They're not contradicting each other. They're just showing two different perspectives, right? They're showing, yes, from the ascendant, you're going to be enjoying about learnings. And from the moon, it's going to be making your already intuitive mind very stable and as if it's directly gaining something, right? Now, mostly people don't really care or they don't really look at the moon chart for two reasons. Why? They did not understand what each core house represents, so they get a little confused when, you know, for example, your Venus in this situation is not giving you conventional second house significations from the ascendant. And then secondly, and this kind of is also a branch of the first reason, people really only care about what's happening from the like what's happening on the surface, right? It's like who cares, you know, what's going on in your mind. But if you understand the whole house concepts and you care about what's going on, you know, not just on the surface, but, you know, in your mind and everything like that, which in my opinion is where the true happiness is coming from, right? This is why, you know, your dasha system, the Vimshottari dasha system, it's all based off of your moon nakshatra, right? Your mind is so important. So it'd be really great for you to understand this and, you know, so you can apply it and so that you can know what each house represents. So if you're trying to, you know, and this will help you, like, you know, identify or dive deeper into all sorts of different relationships, right? Like, for example, you'll be able to understand divisional charts a lot better. And then also, like, let's just say, for example, you're in this situation, your Venus that's just started, right? So I give the example of making the moon as the ascendant. But what happens if you want to make your Venus as the ascendant, right? You want to see how this is actually going to play out. You know, Venus is kind of like the star of the show here, right? So it'd be really cool to see how things are from its perspective, right? So, for example, if I were to make when your Venus dasha starts, and I were to make your Venus you know, the ascendant of that chart. So that chart is representing what? Your enjoyment. What does the moon in the 12th house mean? Well, it could mean that your moon, who's a little bit intuitive and kind of ungrounded, is kind of hampering away from your enjoyment and because the 12th house represents losses. So because your moon is 12th from your Venus, it's basically losing your moon is directly contributing to the loss of your enjoyment, which is true because the ungrounded nature of the mind is not allowing the Venus to enjoy, right? This is just I'm just being very general here, but you can see how this applies a lot deeper if you actually understand the root concepts, right? And then you can kind of really understand the difference between, you know, the Mahadasha planet and the Antardasha planet, and, you know, also, like I said, divisional charts. And you can start to learn this stuff on your own rather than just, you know, relying on other people to give you the answers, right? Because, you know, nobody knows you like you. So if you can figure out the system, yourself, you're going to benefit a lot more because you're going to be able to uncover millions of times more than anybody else would, including me, right? So that would be my recommendation. And if you need to take advice from people, and this is why most of my videos are showing you how to actually figure stuff out on your own. I'm not just making, even if I make transit videos and things like that, I'm kind of explaining the deeper concepts and stuff to shed some light. Don't avoid people who are just trying to tell you what's going to happen, especially for a certain ascendant or any of this stuff. Okay. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys really learned something. It's a really important topic. Not the actual topic directly, but just if you are able to understand the topic, the requirements or the prerequisites required to really understand this topic, those prerequisites can allow you to understand a lot more, okay? But that's it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, as usual, feel free to let me know in the comment section or email. I'll talk to everyone next time. Thank you all very, very much for watching.